Hey everyone, Jeff here. Now, on a recent live feed I did, someone asked me a great question. How did you develop your own style on the guitar? And it really got me thinking. In this video, I'm going to break down that honest process of finding my own voice on the instrument. Whether I'm successful at it or not, I'm not always sure, but I'm always trying. And I'll share with you what worked for me and what hasn't worked for me, and some ideas that you can use to develop your own unique style so you just don't sound like your influences, you sound like you. So one of the most impactful things I ever worked on was to limit myself on the guitar. I'm going to limit myself, say, to like 2 strings at a time. And that may sound strange, but it's that there's a kind of a freedom in restriction. It forces you to focus in on phrasing, telling a story or melody, or doing something different because you're not able to play a scale finger and you're just locked in these little areas on the guitar, like I said, are 2 strings. This is actually what my course Unlocking the Major Scale is based upon, taking these major scale patterns and exploring them in a way that sounds musical instead of running scales. So let me just give you an example here. So let's say I'm going to be in the key of G major, right? I have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. And I'm going to play between my D and my G string. And I'm going to play the notes of G major up and down each string. So it's going to be D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. Then back down, D, C, B, A, G, F sharp, E, and D. You could do the same thing on the 3rd string. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. So for an example, let's take these 4 notes here, this E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C. I can mix those notes in any combination that I want. I can play them all in unison. I can keep a pedal tone in the bottom, or a pedal tone in the top. Or I can start to mix it up. Let's say I'm going to go one note's going to go up and the other one's going to descend. I can play those in fifths. And I can move that to the next, say, packet on the fingerboard of those 6 notes. Now, I can do this across the fingerboard, and what this started to get me to see is different ways to see the fingerboard. I'm just going to improvise a melody. I'm going to have kind of E minor, key minor, and G major, the same scale. So I'm just thinking about that. I'm just locking myself into those 6 notes in that one position. Let's go to another position. Let's go to the next one up. So same chord, right? So by just kind of experimenting, I start to hear resolutions that exist inside that part of the fingerboard. If you're just thinking of a scale fingering, you might not see those. So I spent a lot of time doing this. I can do it over a drone, which is tons of fun, which I do on that course. And it just allows me to try to experiment with what's in that region of the fingerboard. Now, it doesn't have to be 2 strings at a time. It can be anything. But the idea of limiting what it is you're going to do. I'm only going to play the top 3 strings. I'm only going to play whole notes. I'm only going to play quarter notes. But by limiting myself, I started to discover these things that I never thought about doing. One of the main things I started to discover is how the fingerboard works and how I can start to create melodies on the fly because I'm thinking about creating a melody. This was huge, huge for me, and I listen to my playing now, and there's things that I know I do that are distinctive to me, and I know a lot of it came from doing this kind of stuff. One of my favorite guitar players of all time is Jeff Beck, and what I love about Jeff Beck is that he would always play something that was unexpected to me. You weren't hearing cliches. You were just hearing kind of pure music. Now, when people say like, oh, he was just playing what he felt. Yeah, but he also practiced a lot. So it's not like he just played something and that came out. He spent a lot of time on the instrument developing that skill. For me, the introduction of Goodbye Pork Pie Hat that he did of the old Mingus tune, his interpretation of that melody is absolutely astounding. How he approaches the notes, how he changes the sound of the guitar, changing pickups, changing the tone knob, doing all these really cool things. But one simple thing that you could think about that I love that he did is oftentimes he will not play the same thing exactly the same way twice. So for example, say if I take these two notes, the end of the phrase of Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, right? So here, I can play the D to the C as a hammer on a pull-off. Or I could do something like Beck might do and slide it. Or I can bend it. So what I can think about is any note that I play, I can practice building some of these melodies as I was doing before, but maybe I'm going to bend to the note that I wanted to get to. Maybe I'm going to slide to it. I'm going to concentrate on how it sounds. How can I make it super musical and super cool? This is where I started to really go like, oh man, that's something that I'm starting to do that I don't hear other people do. Or I hear some of my favorite players do it. Now it's part of my playing. Now, one thing that's become a part of my playing as a result of working through these kind of ideas and experimenting was if I have a half step, say if I have a C note, very often I won't fret the C. I might bend to the C from a half step below. So I'm going to bend from the B to the C. So instead of going, I might go. Now, why would I do that? I get that little interesting rise into the B note, sorry, the C note. And then I also have the option of adding this sort of bend and vibrato that I can play with the pitch a little bit, right? So if I have this, let's say an A minor chord, I can really work that note, the C. Do I want it to be a straight on C? Do I want it to be a little flat to get a little bit more of a rub? Those are things that I developed over time. So for example, maybe I did this, right? As opposed to going, that doesn't sound bad, but if I'm going to play two C's in a row, I might play the second one differently, right? I'm going to bend to the second one, as opposed to going. So that little bit of a bend suddenly made it so much cooler, didn't it? It made it be a little more unexpected. It sounds much more musical, way more interesting. So it's those little things that I hear my favorite guitar players do, like, oh, he didn't just play that note or double that note the second time he approached it differently. And I developed this by consciously practicing with intent, super important, look for ways to approach a note that is not just hitting it. Can I bend to it? Can I slide to it? Can I add some nice vibrato? Anything like that. A pre-bend, any sort of thing that you can do to make that note a little more interesting. But you have to spend the time and work on it and hone it. And I do this all the time, still working on it, because I'm still working on trying to sound more like me. Now, next up, I always want to think musically. Am I playing music as opposed to playing scales or licks or shredding or whatever? Now, there's room for that and there's time for that, of course. But, you know, our favorite solos are usually the ones that you remember, which usually end up being the ones that are the most musical. And my favorite solos are always in my favorite songs. So I'm going hopefully for the bigger picture as opposed to being guitar guy. So if I'm on a gig and I'm getting ready to solo, I want to tell a story. Do I have a beginning, a middle, and an end? It's really, really important as opposed to just these disjointed ideas. You have to practice that. So put on the track, make a track, anything like that of the stuff that you're going to be soloing over. So you're practicing over the actual thing that you intend to play in front of people. It's really important. And that was like a lesson that took me a while to learn, which is really kind of dumb, right? Just because I'm good at doing this doesn't mean I'm going to be really good at the thing that I'm going to play in front of people. So before I go on the road or have a gig, I practice playing over my songs. Even though I played over them for years, I still run over them again to make sure the ideas are fresh and I remember the parts. Okay, now this one hurts. It does, but it's essential, and that is record yourself as often as possible and listen back to it whether you like it or not. And the questions I ask myself is, mainly, would I want to hear somebody play this? Would I be interested in what this guy is playing? Is it touching me in some way? Is it, is he just playing some BS stuff? Is he just shredding? That is something I ask myself all the time. And I'm maybe overly critical of it because it's rough. It's hard to do that. But that honesty will separate you from other players, right? And the ones who, it'll keep you improving as opposed to stagnating. You have to be really honest with your own playing. Try not to beat yourself up too much. It's a journey. It's a road. It should be fun. But it should be fun. It's not always fun. It should be rewarding. There we go. Now, an important thing to think about when you're listening to yourself back is, can I hear somebody's influenced my playing, or do I sound like I'm trying to play like that person? That's an interesting distinction because I can hear my influences, and maybe people can too, where I use the bar sometimes. It can be very much a Jeff Beck sort of sound to it. But I really try to go out of my way to not sound like Jeff Beck, for example. It's hard to do that, but what I'm getting at is influences are one thing, and I think it's very difficult to be completely not influenced by somebody else. And it's okay if you're influenced by somebody else. Everybody's been influenced by somebody else. But I try to not sound like them. Like the last thing I want to hear is another Stevie Ray Vaughan clone. I just can't do it. There was Albert King and Jimmy and Stevie, and I don't want to hear anybody do that anymore because those guys did it. So when I hear guys kind of just regurgitate those licks, I wonder what's going on in their head. Where for me, I'm like, I just want to sound like me. Why would I want to sound like anybody else? Now, if you guys are familiar with my channel, I do talk a lot about your touch, vibrato, and your dynamics. That's how I really found my own voice, when I just sat around going, okay. Right? I'm trying to create these melodies, but in doing so, I am playing harder and softer. I'm using the dynamics just coming from my right hand. Maybe turn my volume down a little bit on the guitar to get a little bit difference of the overdrive, how much gain I use, but it's really mostly coming from my right hand in terms of how dynamic it can be. The cliche is I'm not talking to you like this on the video the whole time, because you would turn it off right away because I'd be unlistenable. But hopefully when I'm speaking to you, or anybody does, they change the pitch of their voice, the timbre of their voice, and how loud they speak, how soft they speak. That's how we keep people's attention. And this is the same exact thing on the guitar. So I would experiment, literally going, turn it up a little bit, go more gain. Right? So you get all those different sounds right in there. So if I'm going to play a line, I'm going to play this. I can do ba, 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 right? Or right? So I'm thinking about how I can just rephrase that thing, how I can pick it harder or softer. I can add in vibrato. becomes so much more interesting. Now, when you start to do that with the stuff I've mentioned earlier, let's say the playing two strings together. So as you can see, I'm just using some of the stuff I talked about, but I'm really experimenting with just making up melodies, using dynamics, maybe approaching the notes differently. Am I going to bend? Am I going to slide? All the things I talked about before. I can pick on different parts of the neck. Change pickups. Turn the volume down. Now the vibrato is really like your thumbprint. All my favorite players have the greatest vibrato. So finding your style isn't a destination, it's a lifelong process. But it starts when you stop trying to sound like someone else and you start listening to yourself. Now you can do these things. I'm telling you how I did it. I went through a few string sets, spent a lot of time, analyzed it, listened back. Do I like what I played? I can play that better. Is my time good? Okay, how can I be more expressive? Am I telling a story? Am I playing a melody? Do I sound like a singer? Do I want to listen to me? Was that something I'm proud of? Or if I heard somebody on a gig play that, I'd be like, yeah, that sounded really great. Now, if you want to dig deeper into this kind of thinking, I made my course that I mentioned earlier, Unlocking the Major Scale. And there we take a G major scale. I show you pretty much every iteration that you can think of for a G major scale. In position, 3 note per string, 2 notes per string, 1 string at a time, 2 strings at a time, 3 strings at a time, string skipping. Going through all those things made me see the guitar differently. I saw it much less as like shapes and positions, as more just kind of like a big ice skating rink, right? Like maybe the way people see a piano. I saw all the notes, they start to light up, and I saw all the things that I could start to do to break me out of sounding like I'm playing scales and a way to sound more musical and much less mechanical. And that is on sale for a special price using the link above or below. All right, everyone, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe. Certainly helps me out quite a bit. And until the next time, I'm Jeff McElwain.